What's up, everybody? Welcome to the video. Chris Pennell here. We're breaking down the Shriners Children's 500 at Phoenix Raceway for our first real race of the season. Now, I'm not disrespecting last weekend's race. That was probably the best road course race I have seen in a long time, definitely in the next-gen era. But to start the season, we had two super speedways, so obviously that is absolute chaos. And then we had a road course. So none of those races are really a good indication of what we should expect for this season. So we're kind of pretty much starting the year here. And we're going to get a nice practice session this weekend. Now, I know Phoenix is one of the more boring tracks on the series, but I'm hoping this option tire this weekend might make it a little bit more interesting. But anyway, this happens to be your first time here. What's up? My name is Chris Pennell. I break down NASCAR DFS each and every single week on this channel. Videos on Saturdays, live streams on Sundays, usually around Sunday afternoons. So come and say hi. Always a good time. And if you do end up enjoying today's video, make sure you leave a like down below. Subscribe to the channel for brand new. Let's dive right into it. All right, let's talk some strategy here for Phoenix. This is going to be the first week where dominator points really matter this weekend. So at Coda, yes, having a slight dominator does help, but who were the best scoring drivers? The ones that really didn't lead any laps. Christopher Bell came from 18th or 19th, whatever it was, and then William Byron pretty much did the same. They finished 1-2. The dominator points picked up from Tyler Reddick, SVG, really didn't matter at all. Then we get to the super speedways. Dominator points, once again, don't matter. Fast laps are completely random. Well, here at Phoenix, and just any short track, and also intermediate tracks as well, but especially the short tracks, these guys that can get laps led points and fast laps, that's going to accumulate a ton. These guys have 100-point ceilings. Meanwhile, guys that don't have that dominator upside, maybe only have place differential upside, they're going to be capped to a degree. So since we have 312 laps this weekend, that equates to just over 200 total dominator points. So getting at least two of these guys per lineup will definitely be important this weekend. Now, a big talking point this weekend is going to be the reintroduction of the option tire. It's basically just trying to make the racing better because we know that these short tracks have not been good in the next gen era. So now we have the choice of using an option tire. We have the yellow prime, which is basically a hard tire. It's better for long runs. You're not going to have that insane grip and speed at the beginning. Now, if you're on the red tire, which is the option tire or the soft tire, you get more grip. You're faster in the short runs. But once you fall off, these yellow guys are supposed to have a bit of an advantage. So what's the reasoning behind it? Well, if you try to get off strategy, we saw it happen with Daniel Suarez and Michael McDowell at Richmond, which really, that's a track that eats up your tires a ton. Those were like the only guys at a certain point that ended up taking the option tire, and they went straight towards the front. Well, more so Daniel Suarez, and he was trying to gap the time, and it actually worked out quite well for Suarez. And obviously, since he was the only guy on red tires, pretty much besides Michael McDowell, he's still on the fast laps, and it ended up working out. Now we'll have to see how this ends up playing out, but just for you guys to know, we have two choices of tires this week. You have 6 prime tires and you get 2 option tires. So obviously you can't just go option tire the entire time. You have to try to decide when you're going to do it. But this is what's on the table for the drivers this weekend. I'll probably just end up making this a weekly segment because I think it's really fun to visualize data. I mean, I like looking at stuff on spreadsheets because I'm a nerd. But for those of you that like to have, the car numbers are on here and it's on a chart, it's a bit easier to read and comprehend in that way. It's also a nice preview of what to expect this weekend. So what I like to do is try to compare drivers for their average running position and drive rating, given a sample size of what we're using is roughly 25 races for the guys with the max of next-gen short track, pretty much loop data here. And this is every short track we have ran in the next-gen era. So it's Phoenix, Richmond, New Hampshire, Gateway, Martinsville. I might be forgetting one, but I guess Iowa. They're all there. So if we look in the upper right quadrant, these are the guys with the best average running positions, the best average drive rating. These are pretty much who you'd expect to be the contenders this weekend. It should be no surprise you see Ryan Blaney at the top, Kyle Larson, Joey Logano, Chase Elliott, Hamlin, Byron, Bell. If the winner does not come from one of those 7 drivers this weekend, I would be extremely, extremely shocked because these are the guys that are just basically up front getting all the dominator points every single time we're at a short, flat track. Blaney has been incredible. Christopher Bell, now since we're dating back to 2022, if we were just looking at last year's numbers, Bell would be a bit higher because he absolutely crushed them last year, but just typically these are the guys you would expect. And if we do a quick switch over to just look at Phoenix specifically in a 6-race sample size since 2022, Ryan Blaney once again at the top. I mean, we can go over the numbers later, but he has been in the top 5 each and every single race. Somehow has not yet won. At some point that's going to happen. Penske has just been way too good here. William Byron's right there with them. He's been incredible at Phoenix. Kyle Larson. Bell and Logano a little bit further down, but like I said, Bell last year did win this spring race. Logano's been fine. you're going to see these guys be the contenders unless we get something crazy happen with an option tire. But overall, once we get practice and qualifying, these are the guys you'd expect to be at the top of the board. And finally, moving on to the driver by driver breakdown, I do have to mention one thing first, and that's, of course, I gotta give myself a plug. It's a free video, guys. Gotta let me feed my dog. But if you want to join the best NASCAR DFS community out there, link is down in the description or the pinned comment for the Patreon. If you are a new user, you can get a free week, so there's absolutely no reason to not try and test drive the entire suite of tools that I have to offer every single weekend for the Cup, Trucks, and Xfinity series. And really quick, a big announcement. The optimizer that's always been in-house, it's only always supported DraftKings, but we now have it for FanDuel. And that's not just for NASCAR, but NBA, MLB, when that comes in the NFL, obviously, in the future. So that is a major addition and something I will be taking advantage of. And the hope is to be able to push that to the contest simulator, which is supporting DraftKings currently, but hopefully in the future we'll be able to get it working for FanDuel sooner rather than later. I'll try not to bore you to death. Here's everything that I do have to offer. I might be missing a couple things, but if you just want to pause it or take a screenshot, be my guest. But I will tell you right now, you're going to find a better price for everything they do have to offer, plus the contest simulator, which goes for an arm and a leg at most places, and you have the ability to do that at a pretty fair price point over here. And they're very popular in the DFS landscape for a reason right now. I mean, being able to simulate the slate to your own desire, whether you're in a large field single entry type contest and being able to make the field a little bit sharper, less sharp, it is a huge advantage to yourself. So obviously I'm biased, but I do think you'll enjoy. So if you want to come in and check it out, I would love to have you. But now that I've sold my soul, let's get into it. Okay, so practice and qualifying just now ended, and we got a good amount of lap data. There was no groups this week, just every single car on the track whenever they wanted for roughly about 45 minutes. And if we head over to some of this practice data, I'm not going to spend a ton of time mulling it over with you guys, and obviously some of it needs to be taken in with some context. But I do have the entire lap by lap data here. I believe the most we got was 78 laps by Ryan Blaney. I do have the fastest 3 laps ran by a certain driver, 5 laps, 10 laps, and as you can see, Tyler Reddick was pretty awesome. And excluding some of these poorly done laps, William Byron was the fastest driver overall. And what do you know? He ended up throwing it on the pole, which is, I think, at least a good indicator that, you know, some of these practice speeds are certainly going to matter. But let's just go driver by driver here, and we'll start with this 10K group first. Well, 10K plus Christopher Bell. And we can kind of split these in 2 groups here within this group. So we have Christopher Bell, Ryan Blaney, Kyle Larson. Are these race-winning contenders? Yes. Are they starting outside the top 10? Yes. So that kind of makes them hybrid plays. Now at Phoenix, it can be pretty tough track position-wise to make that up and get up front and dominate, but I do think that is possible. But then we have the front row here with Joey Logano and William Byron. I do want to mention, you got William Byron at plus 1,000. Earlier in the week, I'm assuming this is probably going to drop down to 400, 450, so I'm definitely not going to be complaining about that. But this is the first week we're going to see dominant points really matter. We've been at a road course, we've been at 2 super speedways. We're finally going to understand that, hey, this is pretty important this week. So William Byron, Joey Logano, these are most likely lap leaders, and if you look at who is starting around them inside the top 5, we have Josh Berry at number 4, and that's no disrespect to Berry. He's pretty much in a Penske car, and he's a very good short flat track driver. It would not surprise if he runs well, but getting in front of Byron, Joey Logano early on, I would say it's unlikely. Carson Hocevar is in 3rd. Eric Jones is in 5th. Michael McDowell is in 6th. So it's overall a pretty weak group behind them, which I think probably sets the tone for them to be running up front, probably sharing fast laps at the beginning of this race. And we have 100-point plus ceilings here. I mean, if they can lead half this race, I mean, I'm fine with playing them both in the same lineup if you want to. Obviously, that's going to leave you less of a floor. The ceiling will be very high, but I think a lot of people probably end up pairing Byron or Logano with one of these hybrid plays with Kyle Larson, Ryan Blaney, Christopher Bell, who are all fantastic at short flat tracks. They're expensive for a reason, but I really don't think it's going to be that hard to fit them in. We have plenty of cheaper place differential plays, as you can see in Chase Briscoe, Chastain, which they're more expensive, but Ty Gibbs, Alex Bowman, Daniel Suarez, Noah Gragson, they're a bit cheaper, so I don't think it's going to be that hard. So that's one way to probably get different in tournaments is pairing the front row together, which we have seen work at Phoenix in the past. And all these guys are just excellent here. Ryan Blaney has an average finish inside the top 3, best running position with William Byron, basically just a couple decimal points off. Blaney's never been outside the top 5. Like any of these 3 paired with a front runner, that is a 100% fine way to go. Dropping down to the 9K range, once again, looks really good. Denny Hamlin, Chase Elliott, Tyler Reddick. Chase Briscoe will be the chalkiest one here. I know the practice times weren't amazing, but he is really good at Phoenix. He's in the 19 car in a JGR ride, which has been really good at Phoenix in the past. And if you're looking at his Phoenix numbers specifically in the next gen era, he has won here before in the 14 car. He's been in the top 10 4 out of 6 races. Just in general, a really good short flat track racer. He's going to be better than a 30th place car. Now, if you want to get different in tournaments, I would say pretty much just everybody else here will be lower owned than Chase Briscoe. Most likely, you're getting Denny Hamlin in the 9K range, Chase Elliott, who was quietly one of the best short flat track racers last season. Was he as dominant as some of these other guys? Did he pick up the wins as the other guys did? Not really, but the dominator points are not that far off. As you can see, the average laps led and fast laps, they're right up there with everybody else. So I do think Chase Elliott is a pretty intriguing tournament play. Just kind of eyeballing it. I have not yet in projections or anything. That'll be on the Patreon later this evening, but I do think Elliott, Hamlin, Reddick do offer slight dominator upside, but will be at lower ownership. And if you believe in the practice speeds, Tyler Reddick was one of the best cars overall. First in the 5, second in the 10, first in the 15, had some of the best overall 5, 10, 3 lap combinations, just looking at their best laps overall. And while Reddick is not the greatest driver at short flat tracks, Phoenix has been his better one in general. He's been able to get fast laps here. I remember it might have been his rookie year or the year after that. And this was back when Kyle Busch was able to run this place well, but Tyler Reddick was out there he was crushing it. Had some really good runs. And if you look at 6 race sample size, Tyler Reddick does have 4 top 10s and 2 top 5s. So just very intriguing tournament plays here, because I do think Byron or Logano will definitely get ownership because they're easy lap leaders. And then obviously these guys just have inherent name value and they have hybrid upside. But do not be afraid of this range, especially with Chase Briscoe here drawing away ownership. Ross Chastain's right below him, starting in 24th. I mean, these are probably going to look like really strong leverage plays in GPPs, because if one of them can just steal a good chunk of fast laps or potentially get up front, that's going to look fantastic. Dropping down to the 8K range, we have Ross Chastain in 24th. He did not have the actual 24th worst qualifying time. He ended up overdriving it and just kind of screwing it up. Overall, Phoenix has been a strong track for him. He did win in Phoenix. I believe it was the year Ryan Blaney won the championship, ended up winning. Ryan Blaney in second, top 5 half the time here, pretty much going to be in the top 10. He does have some dominator points mixed in. I'm not expecting him to dominate this race starting from 24th, but I do think he'll be a top 15, top 10 contender by the end of the day. So at that price point, at that starting position, yes, he's going to project very well. Kyle Busch will be tough to get to. He's just historically struggled in the next-gen car, well, in the 8 car at short flat tracks. If you're looking at his overall numbers since 2022, Kyle Busch's numbers pretty much put him around 15, 20 place. That's kind of where he is. How has he seen the top 10? Yes. Does he see the top 5? Not very often. I don't really see myself having Kyle Busch here. I wish Chris Buescher was starting a little bit further back, but man, he's been really good at Phoenix. Usually always in the top 10, so I'm not going to completely rule him out. And with a lot of people probably flocking to Ty Gibbs here, if Ty Gibbs just continues his poor run and just throws it in 23rd, if Chris Buescher can sneak in a 7th with fast laps, that's going to make up for it, and the ownership will be lower. So I'd rather play Chris Buescher over Kyle Busch personally. And I do think there's an interesting conversation to be had about Buescher over Ty Gibbs in tournaments. And I'm not saying Ty Gibbs is a bad play. He's going to project awesome. He'll be extremely high owned at this price point and starting position. And he was not bad in practice, but it's just one of those things where you got to think about, like, hey, I don't mind taking out Ty Gibbs in a few lineups to put in Chris Buescher. We talked about this last week at COTA. Does Austin Cindric look like pretty much the best play in the slate? I think he was $8,200 and he was starting in the very back. Yes, but there's guys around him like Kyle Busch where he's starting a lot further up front and the floor is much lower. But if he happens to get fast laps and get up front, he can outscore a guy like Austin Cindric if he could just get stuck in the back. And that's pretty much exactly what happened. So you always have to keep that in mind when it comes to tournaments. But Ty Gibbs in cash games is obviously going to look great. And I do think it works out more often than not. And don't forget, in this Phoenix race last year, he actually led laps and was going to have a good finish. But I believe he ran into issues at some point, which tends to be what happens with Ty Gibbs. I believe his average finish the last like 6-7 races and outside the top 30, just complete bad luck. Keselowski's probably going to run the same as Chris Buescher. He starts a little bit further back, so it's a bit easier to get to him over Buescher. Probably ends up being a little higher owned. Dropping down to the 7K range, Alex Bowman will be one of the higher owned drivers on the entire slate. We have good recency bias with Bowman. I believe the past couple of slates he's been chalk. He's done well. People like to go back to drivers like that. Starting in 32nd, does he have the best car in the world based off of practice? No, but do you have to have the best car in the world in the 7K range starting 32nd? No, if he finishes 15th, 16th, you'll be very happy with the results. And the other Hendrick cars look pretty good. Larson, he ended up screwing up his lap a bit, but Byron's on the pole. Chase Elliott's inside the top 10. Like, Hendrick should be pretty strong. Josh Berry starting in 4th. Man, I wish he was starting further back. I think this 21 car might have some juice this year. Maybe getting some extra support from Penske with Josh Berry behind the wheel, which I do think Berry is a much more talented driver than Harrison Burton. But starting in 4th, I'll tell you right now, he's not going to project well. The only way Josh Berry works out is if guys like Ty Gibbs, Keselowski, Bowman, all these guys fail. which all of that happening, I'd say it's probably unlikely. And then in addition to that, Josh Berry has to stay in the top 5. He has to get fast laps and finish up there. So it's a pretty unlikely route for Josh Berry to hit the optimal. Although just based off of how FanDuel works, I would rather play Berry over on FanDuel. I think like he's still not going to project as well as a Bowman or a Ty Gibbs, but it's not going to be as much of a difference as it would be on DraftKings. At least my preliminary thoughts would think so. Cedric Bubba Wallace, they're easier to get to than Josh Berry, but once again, they just find themselves in a sandwich where there's just so much PD here. These guys are probably projected to finish somewhat similar to them, but they're starting much further back. So they're tournament pivots. Bubba Wallace has not been too bad at Phoenix. I think I'd prefer him slightly over Austin Cindric, even though he's in a Penske car. We know how good Penske is at Phoenix, but slight preference to Bubba. But Daniel Suarez, he just finds himself in that chalk place differential pool, qualified poorly, but at Phoenix, he's just kind of like a 15th place driver. 4 to 6 races, he's in the top 15. Practice, 30th, 23rd, 18th, 14th. I think he just finishes somewhere like 15th to 20th. And at 7,100, that's not horrible, and obviously there's more upside to it. 6K range, Carson Hocevar. I'm not going to do it. If Hocevar is optimal, I'll just eat it, but I can't. Noah Gragson, $6,800. He'll be starting in 33rd. Great run last week out of nowhere. I don't really think anybody saw that coming to that degree. Was running inside the top 5 at the end. I think he faded down to 8th or 9th, but still either way, very impressive from Noah Gragson. His practice speeds kind of have him based on around a 15th, 20th place car. 3-race sample size in the next gen era. He's been in the top 15 2 out of 3 races. So not too bad. I mean, starting in 33rd, that's just like an easy cash play. In the 6K range, Ryan Preece not too far behind. Very similar. Now, Eric Jones and Michael McDowell, I don't really see myself getting to them much. On FanDuel, maybe more so Michael McDowell, because once again, the PD isn't just weighted as heavily over there, and it's more finishing position. And from what we saw in Michael McDowell's car, I mean, early on, he was pretty strong, but I do think he'll probably end up fading back to around, I'd say 10th to 15th around that. I don't think he's going to suck, but that starting position makes it really rough. And Eric Jones, I can't see myself playing Jones there in 5th. And then after that, we kind of fall off a cliff. As far as talent is concerned, we have Custer and SVG, not a lot of interest there. Dinger and Haley are starting a bit far for me to have any interest. Riley Herbst, decent run last week, of course, for where he started. But, man, starting in 18th, I think we're starting to push it a little bit. Looking at how he performed in practice, we only got a 10-lap run consecutive. It wasn't anything overly impressive. I feel like he kind of qualified maxed out. Austin Dillon might be able to sneak himself inside the top 15, top 20, $5,800. I don't think he's the worst play in the world. At Phoenix, he's been in the top 20 half the time in the next gen era. Like, it's not like if Dillon at $5,800 finishes 19th, I don't really think you're complaining too much, because I'm not really sure how much upside these guys have back here. Obviously, we're not playing Catherine. We're not playing Cody Ware. I'm not playing Ty Dillon in 25th. I don't really have interest in Ricky Stenhouse. John Nemechek in 36. He had a couple of decent laps in practice, and the 10-15 lap consecutive runs, it definitely fell off quite a bit, but all he needs is a couple of guys to have some issues, and if he sneaks in 28th off some shuffling around, I mean, it's not bad at $5,300. Zane Smith actually has some pretty decent laps in practice, 12th in the 10, 5th in the 15. If you look at some of the practice results overall, sorted by their best 5 laps, Zane Smith actually coming in pretty mid-packish, which, does that sound amazing? No, but I mean, if you're going to start in the back at that price point, I mean, mid-packish is definitely fine starting at 26. Like, if he finishes 24th, it's not horrible. I mean, Nemechek's obviously the safer play, but him and Todd Gilliland, I mean, they're definitely viable. So not much to like down here. I would say probably like Zane Smith, Nemechek, Austin Dillon are the current front runners as of right now. With that being said, that's all I got for you guys this week. So I hope you enjoyed. If you did, or even if you didn't, make sure you leave a like down below. Subscribe to the channel for brand new. If you want to come in during the live stream, it'll probably be around 1 p.m. Eastern. So come and say hi. Always a good time. And if you want to check out all the extra content, it's available in the link down below in the description or the pinned comment over in the Patreon. And if you have any questions, comments, concerns, leave them down below. I'll be more than happy to answer them. We wish you the best, and I'll see you all next time.